Hi, it's Nicole, and today I'm going to be doing my POCathon wrap-up. Even though I didn't do a TBR or announcement video or anything saying that I was participating, and I read 2 books for the readathon, which I think is pretty good for me in a week. The first book that I read for the POCathon was A Small Place by Jamaica Kincaid. This has been on my TBR for a long time now. I've been wanting to read more Caribbean literature because obviously being from the Caribbean, I feel like I probably should do that and really acquaint myself, or I should say reacquaint myself, with the literature from my region. So in the preface of A Small Place, Jamaica Kincaid says that this wasn't really supposed to be a book. It was just kind of her explaining herself almost to her editor at the time, and it essentially is a critique of Antigua through a rather cynical storytelling process. I found it very relatable, and like I said, it was very cynical, very sarcastic. It felt kind of angry, but those are all things that I think spring from a frustration and a disappointment about the things that you wish that were happening in your country and the things that you wish weren't. And I feel like a lot of the times it's hard as somebody from the Caribbean to talk about those things because you are expected to live in this idyllic, paradisiac sort of place, and yes, it does have those elements as well, but there are also problems, and a lot of those problems in the case of Antigua and also in the case of the Bahamas, where I'm from, those problems are very linked with the colonial history of your country, and it's complex. And that's one of the things that I found really interesting, I guess, about my feelings and knowledge about my own country, and then reading this book, which felt like she feels very similar things, and I assume similar things have gone on in our countries, even though there are some things that are quite different as well. There were times when I felt like I wasn't sure how to judge the seriousness of what she was talking about. For example, she sort of implies that the leadership of the country is not far off being a dictatorship, or it's as though they wouldn't be adverse to using really terrible means of keeping control and staying in control of that country. And I don't actually feel like that for the Bahamas. I feel like, generally speaking, we're pretty nonviolent politically. I wouldn't be afraid of our leadership becoming a dictatorship, for example. But when she says that, I don't know. I can't really properly tell without knowing more about Antigua if that's sort of almost in jest or if that's tongue-in-cheek, sort of serious. Those kinds of things are hard to tell. And I feel like the whole tone of the book is sort of like that. And I wonder how an outsider to any of this kind of thing would perceive that. I guess reading also her intimate knowledge of her own country, despite living far away from it, made me feel even more like I want to keep in touch with my own culture and country, and yeah. So there were a lot of feelings reading that book, but I'm really glad I did, and I would definitely be interested in reading more from Jamaica Kincaid. I've actually already read a collection of poetry from her. I think it was called At the Bottom of the River, and I found that okay. There were some poems in that I really liked, and others that just didn't do anything for me. But I know that she's done other books, like novels, and I think that might be more my speed, so I think I might check out some of her other work that way. What was really interesting about the way that she wrote the book as well is that it's written in a very conversational way, and the sentences go on, and there's brackets in the way that you would go on a tangent and bring in other things, and I actually found that really engaging. It's not a style that I thought I would have got on with like that, but I think the subject matter as well as the tone of it really made that feel appropriate, and I really liked that. I can see though how that might be irritating for some people who don't really like that kind of thing, but I would definitely recommend it, I think. However, I'm not really sure who I would be recommending it to, just because I feel in a way like to really appreciate it you sort of have to have knowledge about the region already in a way. Otherwise, I feel like there might be misunderstandings. But at the same time, the way that she's speaking is as though it's writing for someone who is an outsider completely and doesn't understand the region. And she's talking to them as if you as a tourist would come here and see this and that. And so she's directing it at people from outside of the region. So I guess that's who I would recommend it for too, to have a sneak peek into things. But I don't know, I feel anxious about the idea of like, oh, but don't take these things in the wrong kind of way, don't misunderstand this and that. But you can't really do much about that. All you can do is just read more and more from a certain region, and then you'll get a fuller picture, I suppose. So I don't know where I'm going with that. I would definitely recommend the book, though. I really enjoyed it. Then I read Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. I don't think you can see the cover very clearly because it's so bright, but I'll put it up there so you can see. This book I thought was really fun and I enjoyed it, but I also kind of felt like it was misadvertised in a way. Or maybe I just have a weird idea about what is dark and what is not dark. So basically, I mean, even on the cover it says haunting, dark, and often hilarious. I couldn't put it down. It was definitely funny at times, but I would not call it haunting or dark. I felt like it was more kind of a deadpan humor sort of thing. And I also felt like some of that felt a bit awkward in the way that it was written. Like there would be times when there was a repetition, almost a direct repetition of a sentence that didn't feel like it was done on purpose. It felt like it wasn't edited well or something like that. It just felt kind of staccato. And there were also times in the beginning when she was explaining about her childhood and how she was so weird. It's like the way that she described that, it just felt a bit awkward to me, and I thought there must be a better way to describe that. I wouldn't go so far as to say that I didn't like the writing. I would just say that at times it felt a bit too clunky and the writing was too much in my way. A bit. Like, it was too noticeable sometimes as I'd go through and be like, ugh, that's so awkwardly worded. And at the beginning I thought that maybe that was done on purpose to kind of echo the way in which Keiko, the lead character, was a bit awkward. But then I realized it just wasn't, because other characters were responding in ways that were a bit stiff, or they were replying to things or repeating things in a way that just felt like a normal person wouldn't do that. Even allowing for the culture barrier, it just felt a bit weird. And I say that because of other books that I've read that are from Japanese authors as well. It just felt like the writing was a little bit awkward at times, and that is something that was a little bit off-putting at times. That said, though, it was a fun little story. There's a guy in it who I found really frustrating in a way that I think for most characters he would feel almost unbelievable, but there are people who are like that, so that felt like it felt very real in the end, so that was an interesting thing. And maybe I should say what this is about first. So Convenience Store Woman is basically about a woman who doesn't really fit in. Socially, she feels like she needs a lot of direction from other people to do things right, because she doesn't want to upset other people, and that's the main reason that she decides to do something or not do something or change her behavior, is because she doesn't want to upset the people who are close to her and who she cares about, mostly. But she also just wants to get on with her own life and do things, just go along and feel useful. So she tries to just kind of take direction from other people. She gets a job when she's 18 at a convenience store and just keeps on doing that job, plugging away at that job, until she comes to a point in her life where it seems like that's actually now a problem, because at this new stage in her life, everyone's waiting for her to do the next expected thing, which is get married or get a different, better job. and neither of those things particularly appeals to her, but there's a lot of pressure that starts to be put on her to go in that direction, and things go elsewhere. And I really enjoyed seeing how that all played out. Even though the story is, I guess, slightly exaggerated, it doesn't feel super exaggerated, to be honest. Like, it feels like one of those things where it should be super exaggerated, but actually this feels like that's kind of just what life is like, unfortunately. So there were a lot of things in here that did feel really, like, I could really understand what she was going through. I could connect with this feeling of wanting a manual to tell you what you're supposed to do in so many different social situations, because it's just and like I said before, I was expecting this to get a little bit dark, but it didn't really go in that direction, in my opinion. Maybe other people will feel like it got a little bit dark. I saw a response on Goodreads saying something along the lines of like, this book doesn't have a happy ending, you know, and all of this stuff. And I mean, I don't want to be all spoilersy or anything, but I did not find the ending sad at all. Like, not in the least. I thought, like, yeah, cool, that makes sense. So in terms of what I was expecting and what I got, there's definitely a misalignment there. But it was still really fun and enjoyable, and it was a quick read, and I thought, especially for the purposes of a readathon, fantastic. And since this was my first readathon, I thought I'd just, like, talk a little bit about that experience, because for me, I started out by being kind of really intimidated about the idea of participating in a readathon. Like, I have to read like 1 million books in like no time at all, that's crazy. And also the idea of doing all of the challenges and stuff. But I noticed that Matt from MCS Books kind of used those challenges as just suggestions for if you're stuck, and I was like, yes, that makes so much sense. That feels so much less pressure. And so I just did that as well. Like, I already had some books that I wanted to read that were by, you know, BAME, POC authors. So I just kind of went with that. And I think if I was feeling a bit stuck, then that would have been a great time to look at the challenges and see kind of, you know, ideas of where to start. And also, I always say like a bajillion times in every video, I am a slow reader, so I was feeling a bit intimidated about that as well. Like, there's no way that I can read like 7 books like loads of other people do in a week, and a week when I was still, you know, having to go to work and all of that stuff, just ridiculous. So that was really intimidating as well. But then I decided, again, I'm just gonna be super chill like Matt and take it really easy, and I thought, if I read 1 book in this week, that would be awesome. I instead read 2, so I'm really pleased with that. So I think that's just going to be how I handle readathons from now on. I just kind of use the challenges as some helpful suggestions, read some small books, or just, you know, prioritize what I want to read, as long as it fits into the general thing of the readathon. So yeah. And on that note of like, do whatever you want, I hope you also will participate next time there's a POCathon or just any general readathon, and I'll try to mention ahead of time, and also I'll try to do like a TBR video thing, maybe, or just some recommendations or something like that, because I've seen other people doing recommendations for readathons that they're not even able to participate in sometimes, just to give other people ideas for that. So yeah, I thought that was great. And even though that readathon is now over, I'm gonna stick the information and stuff for it down in the description box below anyway, in case you want to maybe see who was hosting it and follow them and, you know, look at what they've been reading and stuff, because I think like all of the hosts, when I've looked through you know, their activity for the POCathon, it's just been full of loads of really good recommendations and stuff. And I am planning on participating sort of in Bout of Books-ish. I guess I'll just say quickly now, I'm just trying to get through East of Eden for Bout of Books, because I've been reading this for a long time now, and I have really, really enjoyed what I've read, but it's just other things have crept in instead of it and like got ahead of it and stuff. So I want to actually dedicate some time to read this book and maybe even hopefully finish it, maybe, possibly, maybe. And then next week I think I'm going to try to participate in the Women in Translation readathon that's going on. I've checked out 2 books from the library already, and I have one on my phone. So yeah, that's about the size of it. If you have any opinions on these 2 books that I read, or if you have any opinions on East of Eden, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!